Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are on page 644 in the chapter The Origin of Falsehood and Evil, and we read this paragraph on Saturday, but there's a lot in it.
We'll read it now.
We'll do it again.
We saw last time how in the evolution we are starting from a level of total ignorance. There is no knowledge at all. Then when life comes up, the smallest elements of life, amoeba or unicellular creatures, they are now in a hostile environment where they have to meet something apart from themselves, the other self, whatsoever you use the word. So they have to learn how to deal with them. So then slowly it learns how to deal with them. But the intuition is there already involved, so the intuition is guiding from behind, and so there are two sources of knowledge for the first creatures who come into existence in life form. There is an intuition from within, there is a knowledge which is slowly available to them, and there is the knowledge which you gather from the outside world. So inward and outside, and with that slowly the evolution proceeds. But this was from the point of view of knowledge, from consciousness. So we saw that how it's like going through a forest and you don't know where to go. There are 3-4 paths and you don't know where to go. So you try one and find out that that's not the right one. So you have made an error. But by making an error, you benefit. Now you know that that's not the path. So error is a necessary element in your finding out the truth. For finding out the truth. So this is the first. Then after that, once you have understood and you are on the right path also, another factor comes in. There is something pleasant and there is something unpleasant. So the pleasant you accept, whether it be good or bad or whether it is going to lead to a wrong action, that is another matter. But you accept the pleasant and you discard the unpleasant. You may have made a mistake in both. So error is there also. Then the next is you act upon that knowledge. So having made a mistake, error leads to a false choice, and a false choice will give you results which end in falsity. And you may like what is false. So then when you like something false, then you are on the point of evil, because you are choosing something which is false and you like it. And the principle of tamas tells you that what you already have is a comfort zone. It's all right. That's what is known to you. So there is also the element of wanting to remain where you are and not seeking something new. So all these elements come in, and error leads to falsity, falsity leads to evil. But this is from the point of view of knowledge and consciousness. Now what about action? He has dealt all this, he has dealt with the aspect of chit. But there is now the aspect of shakti, consciousness and force. So now he is going to describe how force also goes wrong. We have discussed consciousness going wrong, now we will discuss force going wrong, your actions. This is in the field of cognition. Cognition means knowledge and also consciousness. But the same law applies to will and action. You can call it force or you can call it shakti. Out of ignorance, a wrong consciousness is created which gives a wrong dynamic reaction to the contact of persons, things, happenings. The surface consciousness develops the habit of ignoring, misunderstanding or rejecting the suggestions to action or against action that come from the secret inmost consciousness, the psychic entity. The psychic entity is giving you directions, but because of your limitation of knowledge, you sometimes reject or sometimes you accept, and the choice can be wrong. The surface consciousness can be wrong. It answers instead to unenlightened mental and vital suggestions or acts in accordance with the demands and impulsions of the vital ego. So the vital ego also is coming into the picture now. First it was the physical ego, the manas. Now we talk of the vital ego. Here, the second of the primary conditions separate. Here, the second of the primary conditions of the evolution, the law of a separate life being, affirming itself in a world which is not self to it. So, the second, which is the first one? The physical ego. The second one is the separate life being. Separate life being is your vital. So, the vital ego, which is the second one. The third one is the mental ego. So, he is now talking about the second one. Here, the second of the primary conditions of the evolution, the law of a separate life being. Separate life being is vital. Separate is ego. So, he is talking of the life, the vitality of the ego of the vital being. Okay? The language is very, very general. He is not telling you, but if you say vital ego, then you understand what he is saying. Affirming itself in a world which is not self to it. It enters into an area where there is separation. Yourself, subject and object. Okay, so comes into prominence and assumes an immense importance. The vital ego has got tremendous importance. He is going to explain why. It is here that the surface vital personality or life self asserts its dominance, and this dominance of the ignorant vital being is a principal active source of discord and disharmony, a cause of inner and outer perturbations of the life, a mainspring of wrongdoing and evil. So it's your vital ego which always wants to assert itself against the others, and that automatically means disharmony, disagreeing with others and willing to even use violence against the others. So it's somebody using the principle, the main active source of discord and disharmony, a cause of inner and outer perturbations of the life. So, outer perturbation, my quarrel with you. Inner perturbation, my own doubts and my own disharmony within me. Something is telling me I shouldn't do, but something is telling me I should do. So, there is a contradiction within myself, perturbation within and perturbation outside. The natural vital element in us, insofar as it is unchecked and untrained or retains its primitive character, is not concerned with truth or right consciousness or right action. So, this part of you is not concerned with truth. It is concerned only with self-assertion. Okay, so the natural vital element in us, insofar as it is unchecked and untrained, retains its primitive character of asserting itself, is not concerned with truth or right consciousness or right action. Which part of you is concerned with truth and right consciousness? To a certain extent, the mind, but not the vital. The vital is not concerned with truth, it is concerned only with asserting itself. Okay, so with self-assertion, with life growth, with possession, with satisfaction of impulse, with all satisfactions of desire. Now, interestingly note, is anything wrong here? It is concerned with self-affirmation. It wants to develop itself. Nothing wrong with it. With life growth, nothing wrong with it either. Okay? With possession, there is nothing wrong in possessing and getting knowledge and becoming master of your environment. With satisfaction of impulse, nothing wrong with that either. With all satisfactions of desire. Then what's wrong with it? It's only for yourself, for the ego that distorts the whole thing. The soul also wants all these things. That's what he will tell you later on. I've just anticipated that. So soul also wants growth, wants mastery, wants possession. Okay? So this is the...
But the satisfactions of desire?
Yeah. If I want the divine, I want satisfaction of that impulse. What's wrong with it?
Yeah, but desire versus aspiration?
Desire can become aspiration. At our level, a desire can become aspiration at the higher level. When it is desire, it's for yourself. But for aspiration, it is for the divine that you are doing it, the divine element in you. There is that gradation. Okay, so this main need and demand of the life self seems all important to it. It would readily carry it out without any regard to truth or right or good or any other consideration, but because mind is there and has these conceptions, because the soul is there and has these soul perceptions, it tries to dominate mind and get from it by dictation a sanction, an order of execution for its own will of self-affirmation, a verdict of truth and right and good for its own vital assertions, impulses, desires. It is concerned with self-justification in order that it may have room for full self-affirmation. So there you are, the whole problem is a big sentence. It is doing it for itself. This main need and demand of the life self seems all important to it. It would readily carry it out without any regard to truth or right or good or any other consideration. But the problem is that the vital is not the only part of you. You have a mind which understands good and right and truth, and also your psyche being also understands these things. So there is a clash. Okay. It tries to dominate mind and get from it by dictation a sanction and order of execution for its own will of self-affirmation, a verdict of truth and right and good for its own vital assertions, impulses, desires. So the vital tries very hard to make mind its accomplice. That's what he's saying. And normally, if the mind is not very strong, it becomes a very willing abettor of the crimes of the vital. The mind agrees and supports the vital. In most men, that's it. When you have a very strong desire, the mind is always giving arguments for justifying the desire. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay. A verdict of truth and right and good for its own vital assertions, impulses, desires. It is concerned with self-justification in order that it may have room for full self-affirmation. It tries to get the mind to its own side. But it can't do that with the psychic. But if it can get the assent of mind, it is quite ready to ignore all these standards and set up only one standard, the satisfaction, growth, strength, greatness of the vital ego. Okay? Now, Swami is saying something interesting. The life individual needs place, expansion, possession of the world, dominance and control of things and beings. It needs life room, a space in the sun, self-assertion, survival. This is what it wants. And all this is legitimate. It needs these things for itself and for those with whom it associates itself, for its own ego and for the collective ego. That's the problem. It wants all these things for its own self, ego. It needs them for its ideas, creeds, ideals, interests, imaginations. So all these things, ideas, creeds, ideals, even ideals, interests and imaginations, it wants them all for the collective ego or for its own individual ego. For it has to assert these forms of I-ness and my-ness and impose them on the world around it, or if it is not strong enough to do that, it has at least to defend and maintain them against others to the best of its power and contrivance. It may try to do it by methods it thinks or chooses to think or represent as right. It may try to do it by the naked use of violence, ruse, falsehood, destructive aggression, crushing of other life formations. The principle is the same, whatever the means or the moral attitude. Okay? It is not only in the realm of interests, but in the realm of ideas and the realm of religion that the vital being of man has introduced a spirit and attitude of self-affirmation and struggle, and the use of violence, oppression, suppression, intolerance, aggression. It has imposed this principle of life egoism on the domain of intellectual truth and the domain of the spirit. So, we have got many examples throughout history of what he is saying. The best examples, of course, are in Europe, but everywhere else also it is there. The Inquisition, then the assertion of the Church against the scientific truths that were being discovered after the Renaissance. And they were even willing to not only excommunicate, but even execute them. Joan of Arc was executed. Aristotle also, who was trying to teach truth, was given poison to drink. Okay, so this is the violence. You want to remain in your own, and you don't want anything new. You want to assert yourself. These are the examples.
I think it was Socrates who was given poison.
Pardon?
Socrates was
what did I
given
say?
poison.
Aristotle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always get mixed up between the two. Okay, Aristotle was not poisoned; he was okay. Okay, so then in recent times we have the example of the Christianity insisting that that's the only religion that is right. Then we have the Islam also, which is saying the same thing, that you can approach truth only through Allah. You can nowhere else. So these are all, and you are willing to even kill for them, and also be killed. Now that's exactly what we are seeing now. There is indoctrination in many countries in the Islamic world. They take uneducated children from villages and train them that you have to fight. And even if you lose your life, you have lost nothing, because you will get everything back in heaven. So they are indoctrinated into this.
But this was also Gandhi's principle. Gandhi said, let them kill me.
No, but not kill others. That's a big difference. Gandhi never said that we should kill others for our own truth. He didn't say
No,
that.
but he said
He was willing to be killed.
He said the Muslims could kill Indians.
Pardon?
He said the Muslims could kill Indians.
Yes. He said that I will not resist, because my principle is non-violence. So if they want to kill me, fine, let them do that. I don't mind. Of course, Shabda doesn't agree with that. Okay. So, aggression. It has imposed this principle of life egoism on the domain of intellectual truth. We gave examples of Socrates, and the domain of the spirit. There, in its self-affirmation, the self-asserting life brings in hatred and dislike towards all that stands in the way of its expansion or hurts its ego. It develops as a means or a passion or reaction of the life nature cruelty, treachery, and all kinds of evil. Its satisfaction of desire and impulse takes no account of right and wrong, but only of the fulfillment of desire and impulse. For this satisfaction, it is ready to face the risk of destruction and the actuality of suffering. For what it is pushed by nature to aim at is not self-preservation alone, but life affirmation and life satisfaction, formulation of life force and life being. This is the nature of the vital ego. Wants to assert itself at the cost of its own destruction and the destruction of others also. It has no understanding of right and wrong. And that's why it appeals to the mind to help it to justify its own standpoint. So naturally, it's the source of a huge amount of evil. The chapter is the origin of falsehood and evil. So, the vital ego is the main source of evil and falsehood. We read the next para. Or I'll do one thing. I'll read the summary of it in brief, so we'll get. Yeah. We have examined the process of evolution and its obstructions with regard to chit, knowledge, cognition. But the same obstruction and process apply to Shakti, action and will. Action and will are also hampered in the same way by the same two primary conditions of inconscience and egoism. In the case of action and will, now there intervenes the vital ego. This surface vital personality asserts itself, wants to dominate, dictate terms and conditions to all around. It thus becomes a source of discord and disharmony, physical and emotional perturbations, ending in wrongdoing and evil. This vital being is not interested in the truth and the right. It only concerns itself with its own importance and its own self-assertion. It is interested in possession, dominance, conquest, satisfaction. And in trying to attain to these, it tramples on all others, defies rules, even uses violence if need be. The only restraining action it faces is the mind, which tries to control the vital as best as it can. So, it tries to get the mind to become an accomplice and to get its approval for all its actions. The vital wants only its place in the sun, its expansion, its possession, its dominance, its control. The vital ego works for itself. It may likewise work for its friends, companions, mates. It may even work for the collective ego, the community, the nation. The I-ness and my-ness dominate, and it uses any and every method to achieve its ends. Violence, intolerance, oppression, suppression, aggression. All these are legitimate tools in its pursuit of satisfaction. Naturally, hatred, dislike, vehemence, cruelty, trickery are the results. It is willing to kill or even get killed for its satisfaction. It is a great source of evil and falsehood. The vital ego. Okay, so now we go to the next sentence, next para. It does not follow that this is all that the vital personality is in its native composition, or that evil is its very nature. It is not primarily concerned with truth and good, but it can have the passion for truth and good, as it has more spontaneously the passion for joy and beauty. He is talking of the higher vital.
Yes.
The vital, there are two levels. There is the
third
higher
level.
vital and the lower vital.
Right.
The lower vital is what he has described in the previous para, and this is now describing that which is there for the higher vital. It can have passion for truth and good as it is, more spontaneously, the passion for joy and beauty. In all that is developed by the life force, there is developed at the same time a secret delight somewhere in the being, a delight in good and a delight in evil, a delight in truth and a delight in falsehood, a delight in life and an attraction to death, a delight in pleasure and a delight in pain, in its own suffering and the suffering of others, but also in one's own joy and happiness and good, and the joy and happiness and good of others. This is the vital nature. For the force of life affirmation affirms alike the good and the evil. It has its impulses of help and association, of generosity, affection, loyalty, self-giving. It takes up altruism as it takes up egoism, sacrifices itself as well as destroys others. In all its acts, there is the same passion for life affirmation, the same force of action and fulfillment. This character of vital being and its trend of existence, in which what we term good and evil are items but not the mainspring, is evident in subhuman life. Okay, I'll read that sentence again. This character of vital being and its trend of existence, in which what we term good and evil are items but not the mainspring, is evident in subhuman life. In the human being, since there is a mental, moral and psychic discernment, and psychic discernment has developed, it is subjected to control or to camouflage, but it does not change its character. The vital being and its life force and their drive towards self-affirmation are, in the absence of an overt action of soul power and spiritual power, Atma Shakti, nature's chief means of effectuation, and without its support, neither mind nor body can utilize their possibilities or realize their aim here in existence. It's only if the inner or true vital being replaces the outer life personality that the drive of the vital ego can be wholly overcome and the life force become the servant of the soul and a powerful instrumentation for the action of our true spiritual being. So, he is describing in this para the good points of the vital. Without the energy of the vital, even the mind and the body cannot achieve their aims. That's what he is saying. Energy. Energy can be used in the right way and the wrong way. So, it's up to the mind and the body to use it in the right way. So, it is available, both is available. So, this is what he is saying. Okay. It's very interesting what he is saying. Okay. So, he is saying that this vital, the higher vital, it can work for ideals, it can work for the community, it can work for the nation also, but the ego is there behind. So, when it is doing altruistic works, when it is doing philanthropy, okay, its thinking is doing very good work. It is doing good work relatively, but it is ego driven. It's a vital wants satisfaction for itself. That's what he's pointing out. And unless that can be controlled, spiritual life is very difficult. That's what he's saying. Okay, so the last sentence is very clear. It is only if the inner and true vital being replaces the outer life personality, the outer life personality, the vital ego, that the drive of the vital ego can be wholly overcome and the life force becomes the servant of the soul and a powerful instrumentation for the action of our true spiritual being. The vital ego has to be completely controlled. Otherwise, spiritual life is not possible. I read the summary of what he is saying. What we have said about the vital is not the only truth. Okay? This does not mean that all in the vital is negative and evil. True, it is not concerned with truth and good, but it can have an interest, a passion, an enthusiasm for truth and good, just as it has a natural interest in joy and beauty. The vital being, in whatever activity it engages, in aesthetic, ethical, disciplinary, playful activities, develops a secret enjoyment, a secret delight. It enjoys all that it does and meets. Note interestingly, a secret delight, it enjoys a secret delight even in, there is a nature, the ananda which is there, the rasa, he explains in the Life Divine elsewhere, the delight of existence, the problem and the solution. There he explains. Even tragedies we like, How to explain that? That's a secret delight which is there in everything. So even in the tragic things, it is the soul that seeks the secret sap, the secret ananda behind everything, whether it be good or evil, or whether it be beautiful or ugly or anything, it enjoys the rasa. Okay? So, enjoyment of good, equally of evil, enjoyment of truth as well as falsehood, of life and death, pleasure and pain, its own suffering as well as those of others. Okay? It can be a sadist or it could be a masochist, both. Its own happiness as well as that of others. It engages equally in help as well as obstruction. It sacrifices itself as well as others with equal relish. It exults in construction as well as in destruction. Okay? These tendencies do not originate with man. They come from the animal nature. But in the human being, there are elements absent in animal which control, restrain morality and psychic being, which is not there in the animal. Without the vital energy, prana, neither mind nor body could effectively function. It is the motor power of the vital that allows mind and body to function according to their nature. So long as the higher vital, you are relatively safe. But if it is a lower vital, falsehood and evil are bound to occur. Okay, so nature resorts to this vital dynamism to break away from the inertia and inaction of the inconscious. He is now justifying the presence of the vitality. He is saying that if vitality is not there, you would be absolutely stuck in the tamasic state. You would not want to progress. But it is vital that forces you to action. Okay, so in short, the vital is a bad master, but a very good servant with its vast surrendered energy. Okay, the image of Hanuman, this is my comment. The image of Hanuman, the psychicized vital, is most apt here. Hanuman is tremendous energy. He is Vayu Putra. He is the son of the energy. Okay, he can lift up mountains. He can fly through the air. He can make himself as big as he wants. All these are symbols used in the Ramayana. Okay, but he does all this because of his psychicized vital. He opens his chest and there is Ram and Sita seated always within his. So, if the vital can surrender, that's the Hanuman part. The energy will be infinite and the energy will be used rightly.
But I believe the most difficult thing for humanity.
Yes, but when the psychic does come forward, sometimes in short periods, the energy, you get energy like anything. Okay, that's what he's saying. Okay, so now, this then is the origin and nature of error, falsehood, wrong and evil in the consciousness and will of the individual. Note the word individual. A limited consciousness growing out of nations is the source of error. A personal attachment to the limitation and the error born of it, a source of falsity. A wrong consciousness governed by the life ego, the source of evil. So, it is given as the gradation. This then is the origin and nature of error, falsehood, wrong and evil in the consciousness and will of the individual. A limited consciousness growing out of nations is the source of error. We have seen that very clearly. A personal attachment to the limitation and the error born of it is the source of falsity. A wrong consciousness governed by the life ego, the source of evil. But it is evident that their relative existence is only a phenomenon thrown up by the cosmic force in its drive towards evolutionary self-expression. And it is there that we have to look for the significance of the phenomenon. Why is this happening? We have to look there. For the emergence of the life ego is, as we have seen, a machinery of cosmic nature for the affirmation of the individual, for his self-disengagement from the indeterminate mass substance of the subconscious, for the appearance of a conscious being on a ground prepared by the inconscience. A principle of life affirmation of the ego is a necessary consequence. The individual ego is a pragmatic and effective fiction, a translation of the secret self into the terms of surface consciousness, or a subjective substitute for the true self in our surface experience. It is separated by ignorance from other self and from the inner divinity, but it is still pushed secretly towards an evolutionary unification in diversity. It has behind itself, though finite, the impulse to the infinite. But this, in the terms of an ignorant consciousness, translates itself into the will to expand, to be a boundless finite, to take everything it can into itself, to enter into everything and possess it, even to be possessed, if by that it can feel itself satisfied and growing in or through others, or can take into itself by subjection the being and power of others, or get thereby a help or an impulse for its life affirmation, life delight, its enrichment of its mental, vital and physical existence. So, there is the origin of evil and falsehood. This then is the origin and nature of error. He has given you the gradation. First error, then falsehood, then wrong, and then evil in the conscious will of the individual. Okay, so I again read the summary of what he is saying. Yeah. The origin of error, falsehood and evil is now clear. In the evolution from inconscious upwards, we have the following. Number one, a limited consciousness coming from the darkness of inconscience produces error. That is very obvious. If you are starting from ignorance, you don't know what to do. So you make an error, very clear. Then, a personal attachment and a clinging to error and limitation produces falsity. So, the principle of tamas is there, doesn't want to change. So, whatever you have gained, you want to cling to it. Okay? So, a personal attachment and a clinging to error and a limitation produces falsity. So, falsehood comes in because of the attachment. Then, a wrong consciousness dominated by the ego produces wrong action and evil. But all these are surface phenomena and certainly have their justification in the evolutionary process. The rise of the vital ego is nature's device to make firm and strong the individuality, which commences from the amorphous, undistributed, infinite expanse of the inconscience. The ego is the shadow or the representation and the ignorance of the true being of the individual. It turns out finally to be a fiction, but in the mutability of the lower existence, it's a most essential and useful tool for firming up the individualization. The ego separates itself from all others and even from its own inner true self, but this is an inevitable stage in the evolutionary process. The Swamdeva is describing the necessity of the ego. Again, we come back to the same idea that at every stage, it's a help as well as an obstruction if you want to go. Ego was the helper, ego is the bar. You come to the mind level, mind was the helper, mind is the ego. Bar. So you go up to the spiritual level, even there, it is so satisfying that you want to stay put there. Liberation is enough. The Indian yoga has been saying that for a long time. Liberation is enough. Here comes Ranganath and says, not enough, as it can be even better than that. So it goes on and on.
We can do one more para.
Yeah, we'll do that. Okay. So, I'm just reading the last sentence of the summary. Its function, the function of the ego, the vital ego, is after all to expand, to conquer, to possess, become master of all. And this is exactly the aim of the self. But of course, without ignorant separation, this movement culminates in the cosmic consciousness where unity with all is attained and ego is abolished into non-existence. So all these things that the vital wants is very good, but it should not be done with ego and only for oneself. It should want possession, it should want mastery, but not with egoism. Okay, so we read the next para. That's exactly what it is. But because it does these things as a separate ego for its separate advantage and not by conscious interchange and mutuality, not by unity, life discord, conflict, disharmony arise. Okay, so, and it is the product of this life discord and disharmony that we call wrong and evil. Nature accepts them because they are necessary circumstances of the evolution, necessary for the growth of the divided being. They are products of ignorance, supported by an ignorant consciousness that founds itself on division, by an ignorant will that works through division, by an ignorant delight of existence that takes the joy of division. The evolutionary intention acts through the evil as through the good. It has to utilize all because confinement to a limited good would imprison and check the intended evolution. It uses only available material and does what it can with it. This is the reason why we see evil coming out of what we call good and good coming out of what we call evil. And if we see even what was thought to be evil coming out to be accepted as good, what was thought to be good accepted as evil, it is because our standards of both are evolutionary, limited and mutable. Evolutionary nature, the terrestrial cosmic force, seems then at first to have no preference for either of these opposites. It uses both alike for its purpose, and yet it is the same nature, the same force that has burdened man with the sense of good and evil and insists on its importance. Evidently, therefore, this sense also has an evolutionary purpose. It too must be necessary. It must be there so that man may leave certain things behind him, move towards others, until out of good and evil he can emerge into some good that is eternal and infinite. So coming out of is the division. He is talking of division. When you base yourself on division, there is going to be falsehood and error and evil. But when you go towards the unity, the oneness of things, mutuality and help of others, then you are going towards the truth. I read the summary of what he is saying here.
Yes, we have time.
But all this expansion, possession and conquest is being attempted by the vital ego for itself in a selfish spirit, and certainly not for unity, mutuality and harmony. This is how disharmony and discord arise, and these are the things that man calls wrongdoing and evil when it does it for itself. Okay. But nature accepts evil and falsehood because they serve an evolutionary purpose. We have seen that evil has got a function. It is because evil is there that you want to go towards the good. If evil is not there and you are living in good, there is no incentive to progress. So that's the function that evil does. Okay, so but nature accepts evil and falsehood because they serve an evolutionary purpose. Falsehood and evil are products of ignorance, and the soul that is emerging out of ignorance into knowledge uses wrongdoing, falsehood and evil for its growth. It is error that points the way to truth. Error is the handmaiden of truth. In ignorance, consciousness bases itself on division and separation. In ignorance, Ananda takes joy of division and separateness, the joy of variety. Note this interestingly, in ignorance, Ananda takes the joy of division and separateness, the joy of variety. At the human level of love, it likes the difference. I love somebody else because there is a difference. So, note that in ignorance, Ananda takes joy of division and separateness. Okay. The joy of variety. Evolutionary nature uses all materials, good and bad, true and false, for its growth. Only the use of good would restrict severely its growth. It is also to be noted that nature makes no distinction between these opposites. They are neutral elements to be utilized for development. Yet, it is this very nature that implants a sense of right and wrong, good and evil in man, so that he may move towards the true and away from the false. This moral sense of good and evil has obviously its use and its evolutionary purpose. And then you have to go beyond morality, and then you emerge into the spiritual field and not the moral field. So he is telling you how the wrong and evil and falsehood is coming, and he is also saying that it is necessary at a certain stage. But how is this evolutionary intention in nature to fulfill itself? By what power, means, impulsion? What principle and process of selection and harmonization? The method adopted by the mind of man through the ages has been always a principle of selection and rejection, and this has taken the forms of a religious sanction, a social or moral rule of life, or an ethical ideal. But this is an empirical means which does not touch the root of the problem, because there is no vision of the cause and origin of the malady it attempts to cure. It deals with the symptoms, but deals with them perfunctorily, not knowing what function they serve in the purpose of nature and what it is in the mind and life that supports them and keeps them in being. Moreover, human good and evil are relative, and the standards erected by ethics are uncertain as well as relative. What is forbidden by one religion or another, what is regarded as good or bad by social opinion, what is thought useful to society or noxious to it, what some temporary law of man allows or disallows, what is or is considered helpful or harmful to self or others, what accords with this or that ideal, what is prompted or discouraged by an instinct which we call conscience. An amalgam of all these viewpoints is the determining heterogeneous idea, constitutes the complex substance of morality. In all of them, there is a constant mixture of truth and half-truth and error which pursues all the activities of our limiting mental knowledge ignorance. A mental control over our vital and physical desires and instincts, over our personal and social action, over our dealings with others is indispensable to us as human beings, and morality creates a standard by which we can guide ourselves and establish a customary control. But the control is always imperfect, and it is an expedient, not a solution. Man remains always what he is and has ever been, a mixture of good and evil, sin and virtue. A mental ego with an imperfect command over his mental, vital and physical nature. So morality helps, but it is imperfect.
How many in the ashram do you feel transcended this?
Oh, very few. They have had experiences, but permanent transcendence is not an easy thing. Permanent transcendence is possible in the other yogas because you are not interested in the world, you reject the world. So you remove half the difficulty. But in spiritual life, in the integral yoga, you have to deal with the vital and the physical world. So it's much more difficult. So people have had experiences. So they have transcended temporarily. I am sure some of them have transcended. Nolida, for instance, must have definitely transcended permanently. But all the others, we know that they have had experiences because they are writing in their letters. I've had this experience, this experience. But then you come back again because of the downward gravitational pull of the physical and the vital. You come down. In the others, they don't care. They don't deal with the world. They go to the cave or the forest and remain there and get rid of half the problem. So it's easier for them to do that. But that's a negative success. Sri Aurobindo calls liberation a negative success. You have no power over the physical world. The physical world remains the same. But Sri Aurobindo wants you to have power in the physical world, not only up there, not your consciousness. He wants you to do the right thing here.
Thank you, Ranga. We will see you again on Saturday. Namaste. And we are on page 648. We have read the paragraph.